Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And what you see on screen is a speed test out of El Paso, Texas. So recently, actually yesterday, iOS 16.4 launched, which allowed for you to toggle standalone 5G into the on position, right? AT&T has it as well, but theirs is grayed out. You can't even turn it on or off. And Verizon, they don't have it at all. So what happened in El Paso, T-Mobile launched a second N41 carrier, 40 megahertz. So now it's aggregating 40 plus 40, so that's 80 megahertz on air. So now I'm starting to see faster speeds, which that should naturally happen, right? We've been at 40 megahertz of 2.5 since like the middle of 2020. So that 40 megahertz is quite a bit saturated, right? So it would slow down, right? But now starting to see things speed up once again, as you're seeing on screen. 672 down, 66 up, and then the ping is a 9 millisecond. So you're seeing this. So what I find interesting with this and where they can take it, right? They still got C-band to deploy here. They got DoD to deploy. They don't have a lot more N41 to go, right? They tap out at 140 megahertz total, but they don't own all of it. So outside of the 80 that they're now aggregating, I think maybe I can see another 10 or 20, and that's it. That's it for N41. So they're gonna have to deploy the C-band DoD at scale. They're gonna have to densify, and they might have to think about using some of that CBRS. They don't own any here, but they can use some of that CBRS as well. They might have to think about that. They have a very high saturated market share here, so very important for them to really take it to that next step, right? If they really want to take the fixed wireless serious in this market, there's only two competitors to go against. It's not like we have 4 or 5. It's only AT&T and Spectrum. So there's a large share to grab in this market when it comes to fixed wireless access. So that's something that T-Mobile will have to figure out. That's not something that I can dictate or you guys can dictate. T-Mobile has to figure out how they attack this market and how aggressive that they will be able to sustain, right? They have Verizon too now. That's a threat when it comes to the fixed broadband, home broadband. Verizon is now a threat to take some of those customers from T-Mobile when it comes to broadband. So there's a switcher pool that will eventually be created by both of them taking customers from each other, and then of course taking it from AT&T and Spectrum. So what I want to discuss in the second part of this video is these networks are starting to become very, very, very similar, right? T-Mobile is, I mean, you see the speed right here. I got a speed test last night on the west side of town. Verizon was doing 800 plus on just LTE using CBRS, right? AT&T is adding new sites. They're increasing in speed. So the networks are really, really, really becoming like very, very, very similar. And I can't stress that enough, because early on in the LTE days when Sprint was there, Cricket was still its own network. I mean, Verizon was it was the network to be on. If you were on any other network, you would drastically feel the difference on performance, on calling. I mean, just everything across the board. I mean, of course, going according to root metrics, but at that time, it was really that apparent that you look at root metrics. Verizon was like ranked at 97, and then everyone else was like 70, 60, 55. It was just bad, right? It was really that bad, right? Sprint was still largely 3G CDMA. When they converted to LTE, they had no voice over LTE. That was just a mess. T-Mobile was trying to be, at the cutting edge technology. They were really trying to push VoLTE, and that backfired on them. Verizon just stuck to what they know, right? They kept building. They just kept the network where it needed to be to really take that lead in that early on in LTE, right? But that's no longer the case. Every one of them have a great network. So now you have to differentiate yourself. That is the only way moving forward that you can you can stand out, in my opinion. It's no longer the network where you're going to be able to stand out. In the metro, urban, suburban, I think that they'll all be very close to each other, one performing maybe better than the other, but it's not going to be by a lot, right? And then everything after that is kind of diminishing return. Let's say, this test, for example, I got 672. Let's say somebody next to me had Verizon and they got 900, for an example, right? It's a diminishing return. That person is not going to be able to do anything that I won't be able to do, and vice versa. I'll be able to stream and they'll be able to stream on the Verizon connection's faster, but like I said, it's a diminishing return. So now T-Mobile is positioning themselves differently, as we've seen, right? Trying to lower the churn, trying to add in more perks, trying to see what sticks. They're trying to throw it out there against the wall and they want to see what sticks. Right? And that's a big negative for Verizon, because right now they really don't have anything that's sticking. Their customer service is bad. Their pricing is perceived to be the most expensive. So they have to deal with that and figure that out. But looking at T-Mobile, they are just improving and improving and improving. And they're still not where they need to be. But they are improving each and every fiscal year that they spend. Whatever capex they spent last year was $13.9 billion. This year it's between $9 to $10 billion. Every time they invest, they get better and better and better. Not saying that they're the best, not saying that they're ahead. No, they are getting better and better and better. And like you're seeing on screen, you get that type of performance. Why would you leave, right? Before, like I said, early on in the LTE days, you left to go to Verizon because you really got that much of a better experience, like literally. Like, I don't know if some of you were testing, your devices back then, like maybe you are today, but I was doing that back then. And man, Verizon was the network to be on, like hands down. Like hands down. I remember going to work and Verizon being LTE. And when I had left AT&T, they were still HSPA. And it wasn't HSPA 42, it was HSPA 21. So the max was only 21 megabits. Most of the time, you were only getting 1 to 2 megs. Verizon really had that separation in network back then, like literally. And that's what got them the perception that they're at today. But now, that's done and over with. Everyone has closed the gap. In some markets, of course, where the others have lower share, could Verizon still be dominating? Yes. Right? And RootMetrics shows them being number one in a lot of these metros already in the first half of 2023, but it's not a big difference. It's not like it used to be where they would rank like 97, 98, and then everyone was in the 50s, 60s, 70, AT&T sometimes maybe in the 80s. But now it's like Verizon 99.2, AT&T 99.0, and T-Mobile 98.7, right? It's like right there. Now I know, looking at the statistics, that could be a big difference, right? If you're running millions of tests, that small percentage could be the difference of like 7 drop calls versus not dropping any. I get that. I understand that. But the average consumer does not use their phone enough to mimic those millions of types of tests. So could you occasionally drop a call on T-Mobile? Yes. Or I should say occasionally more frequently? Sure. Because of that, over time, yes, that might happen. But, is that really the deal breaker for you to say, okay, I'm going to go now to Verizon. I'm done. I've had some people send in that they're getting call drops on AT&T frequently, and they're paying more there. So again, now is the time that the networks are getting more and more and more comparable than they've ever been. And I'll make a video on this on the other carriers as well, but I think T-Mobile right now is the best positioned as a business and a company to take advantage of the networks being as comparable as they are. Because now T-Mobile, like they keep saying, they have the best network and the best value. Now T-Mobile can really push into the market. Hey, I am cheaper. Hey, we offer this. Hey, we have better customer service. Hey, we have fixed wireless access. And they are using that to their advantage, not only in the metro suburban, but also now in small rural areas, small town rural areas. That's something where they're aggressively doing that as well, and they are so good at doing it with a subpar network. In a lot of these rural areas, and I'll just throw this in the end of this video. In a lot of those areas, the network is going to take, a few more years to really catch up. But if they have the slightest coverage, the slightest capacity, they will make it happen. They will grow that business without having the best network or having a acceptable network, because they did that when they first started in LTE. If you guys remember that, they were growing under John and they had a subpar network to the competition still. And they did throughout the entire LTE. Did they get better at the end of it? Sure, but they never really committed to getting it there because they started transitioning to 5G. So let me know what you think about that in the comment section down below. Just some thoughts that I wanted to throw out there in terms of the comparable networks now. Please make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.